And so you mentioned
Yeah.
something with like the apple, for example, right? So let's just kind of walk through a couple of examples. I eat an apple and my blood glucose spikes up pretty high to 150, right? A, is that a bad thing? B, if it is a bad thing, how can I mitigate that? And what's it telling me? Like how can I learn from some of these things?
Totally. And that's a really good example right there. So in general, we don't want to see blood sugar jumping up a whole lot, right? We tend to want to just see possibly like a 20 to 30 point jump, not much more than a 30-point jump with meals, ideally. So if you are seeing that on a regular basis, that food may not be the best food for you. Now, with the apple, one thing that you may try to do is add some protein. When you eat the apple, have some protein with it. And really in today's society, a lot of the apples are really hybridized, right? Like I have an apple tree and the apples that come out are sour. They're like sour. They're sour and sweet at the same time, right? It's like a very sour sweet. And those are much lower sugar and they're more nutrient dense, right? So they have more compounds that are anti-cancer, right? And just a lot better for us. Whereas you go into the grocery store and you get your Honey Crisp, which my wife did a apple test with my kids, part of their homeschooling, and they all loved the Honey Crisp the best, right? It was like a blind taste test. And the Honey Crisp is like hybridized to, to have higher amounts of sugar to be everybody's favorite. So they buy it at the grocery store, right? So a lot of the apples that you get at the grocery store, unfortunately, are really high in sugar. And so you do have to be careful with that. Now, one thing you can do is you can combine it with like for example, most people love like apple with almond butter, right? So now you got fat and protein there. That's going to slow down the release of the sugar. And then you add in some cinnamon. Cinnamon will actually activate the GLUT4 receptor, which actually helps get the sugar into the cell more effectively and enhances insulin sensitivity, right? So it helps clear that blood sugar faster and more effectively. So cinnamon can be really, really helpful here. So that's just a great combination right there, is add in some almond butter, add in some cinnamon. So now you kind of have that great combination right there. Another thing you can do is before you eat fruit, like fruit should be a reward after you did some work, right? Like you do some work outside, like, you do a workout or you just did yard work or whatever it is, where you put your body in a state of metabolic demand, right? Where you were burning calories, you were sweating, and now you're using it as kind of a replacement. You're getting electrolytes there, you're getting some antioxidants, and some quick carbs and some water, some structured water to put back into your system. But your body, you're more insulin sensitive, and your cells themselves will grab more of that sugar out of the bloodstream quicker because they're in a state of metabolic demand. Like you're in a fasted, you're in a fasted state, and you're in a state where you've just done work. And so therefore your blood sugar is lower and your body's able to actually take on that sugar more effectively and use it as a replacement. So if I always say, watermelon, when it comes to watermelon, it's a high sugar fruit. I say watermelon is for the people that are outside playing flag football on July 4th, not the guys that are sitting there on the patio watching everybody play flag football, right? It's for after you do some intense work. And that's why a lot of these fruits, when are they ripe? In the summertime, you know what I mean? Right. So our apple tree, we get the apples typically in July. Watermelon, when does everybody eat watermelon? July 4th, right? It's hot. There's some intense heat. These things are great electrolyte replacements, great structured water back into your system, but you should be consuming them after you do work. And that should be the mentality that you have. And therefore you're going to have better blood sugar tolerance. You're going to have better insulin sensitivity. You're going to be able to buffer that sugar response. So that's what I would say right there. And I think if you do that, you'll notice that you don't get those spikes in blood sugar with it.
Yeah, and that's what that's what evidence has shown me too. It's like it's really wild when you play with some of these things. You eat some fats and some proteins with some of these higher glucose meals, and it just like it totally blunts that response. The other thing I would love for you to hit on is, even if it's what does it say about the individual? In other words, their metabolic response. How can we use that as a tool to maybe suggest that, oh, I'm not necessarily utilizing this glucose well? How can I become more metabolically fit so that later when I eat that apple, even if I eat it just by myself, it doesn't
Yeah.
spike so high?
Yeah, for sure. And this is one of the beautiful things about intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting, when you do this or this time restricted feeding, and you eat your meals in kind of a confined eating window, during the fasting window, let's say you eat your meals in a 6 hour eating window, meaning you only eat calories between, let's say, 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. each day. Now you have a long fasting window between 6 p.m. and 12 the next day. And during that window, you are breaking down and reducing the amount of stored sugar. We all have this stored sugar. It's called glycogen in our muscles and in our liver. So as we break that down and we get down to a certain threshold level, then we start to burn fat as our primary fuel source. When we consume food, the next time we consume food after that, our body really prioritizes increasing the glycogen, right? Especially if we're combining exercise with this, because it's kind of this survival instinct that says, you know what? I don't know when my next meal is going to be. I need to make sure I've got enough of this stored sugar just in case, a lion chases me, right? Just in case I'm in a survival period, I need quick energy. And that's the great thing about burning sugar is we can burn it very quickly and get energy quickly and without the presence of oxygen. So you think about it, if you're running, okay, for your life, or, if you're just exercising, you're having to produce a lot of energy in an anaerobic state without oxygen. And that's when we burn sugar for fuel. And a byproduct of that is acid. And that's why sometimes, your legs will burn, your muscles will burn when you're working out really intensely, because we're getting a buildup of that acid as a byproduct, metabolic byproduct of burning sugar for fuel. The body always wants to have a certain amount of sugar. And the more that we are doing things like intermittent fasting, time restricted feeding, and getting good quality exercise in, the higher amount of stored sugar your body wants to have available, right? So it says, okay, I need a certain amount. I need a higher amount than somebody who's not exercising and somebody who's eating, every few hours, because those people are not training it for survival. They're saying, okay, well, I have a continual supply of food and I'm really not in a survival period. I don't need to, to create energy quickly because I'm not training my body through exercise to have to do that. So when we do this intermittent fasting, we burn down a certain amount of that glycogen. So then when we eat meals during that 6 hour window, whenever we're taking in carbs, our body wants to quickly use that and put it into this stored form of glycogen, which buffers our blood sugar response. So when we consume that apple, we're not going to get this high blood sugar, this higher blood sugar level, because we're going to take that sugar and put it right into the liver, right into the muscles. So we've got that stored form. And we're also not going to get the downside of burning sugar as a fuel source, right? We're not going to produce as much of the metabolic waste because we're not actually using it as an energy source necessarily, at least not at that moment. And because we're storing it again. So that's the great benefit of it. So when we're practicing time restricted feeding, it gives us a lot more tolerance when it comes to the carbohydrates that we use. And so if somebody doesn't want to follow a lower carb diet, it's really advantageous to make sure that they are doing time restricted feeding. I'm a big fan, of a lower carbohydrate diet in general. I find that most people do well with it, but there are some people that thrive on a higher carbohydrate diet. But I would still recommend they do this time restricted feeding. And of course, all of us are going to do better with getting more movement, getting good quality movement, regular exercise, resistance training. Our ancestors used to walk 5 to 8 miles a day, right? How many of us are actually doing that?
Right.
Not many, right? I know I'm not on a regular
Nope.
basis. And so all of us should be trying to really be intentional about getting a good amount of movement in every single day, and also adding in strength training. I can't, recommend that anymore. At least doing 3 to 4 days a week where you are lifting weights or doing body weight exercises to really challenge your muscle groups and trying to build lean body mass. That when you build lean body mass, you're going to be able to buffer blood sugar more effectively, because again, you're going to have more muscle tissue to grab up this sugar and put it into glycogen, and you're going to be more metabolically active. Your body's going to be better at burning fat for fuel as well as burning sugar for fuel. You're going to be more metabolically flexible. So those would be the recommendations: intermittent fasting, regular exercise. There are some other biohacks, things like like cold water exposure, even just doing a cold shower, right? If you want to burn fat more effectively, if you want to have more energy throughout the day, just finish your shower. Like the last minute of your shower, just turn it on cold. And I know it's painful, it's uncomfortable, but actually you will feel so energized when you're done. I tell people start with just 10 seconds and work your way up to about a minute at the end of your shower. It's also great for your skin, really helps close your pores, really, really anti-aging for your skin, boosts human growth hormone production, great for your immune system, activates these cold shock proteins, which stimulate higher levels of autophagy and cellular cleaning and cellular renewal. But that cold exposure will turn up your metabolism, will help you burn body fat more effectively. And it turns up the production of brown fat, which are these mitochondrial dense fat cells, right? And those are more metabolically active and less inflammatory than your white fat and your visceral fat, right? And so that's what you want to do. That's a simple hack that you can do. In fact, one thing that I've been doing cold showers forever, but what I would always do it at the end of the shower. And so this year I've challenged myself when I turn on the shower, you know how like that first
This is not
minute,
fun.
yeah, it's not fun at all. That first minute's cold. You're like, oh, I'm just going to let it, you kind of stall so you don't have to get in. I'm like, okay, the moment I turn on the shower, I'm getting in. So what I do is I turn on the shower, I count to 3, take a deep breath, and I jump in there, right? And I just kind of pump my muscles, right? And I'm just pumping muscles and pumping my blood, right? And that really, really starts to kind of protect me. Like, I notice the uncomfortability, but I'm getting that blood flow and I'm teaching my body to drive up body heat quicker. So I actually create more resilience and better survivability and adaptability to temperature changes. And actually, temperature changes are one of the greatest stressors on our body. Like you think about it, when the temperature drops like 30 or 40 degrees overnight, everybody's got a sniffle. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a significant stress on our body when we have this sudden temperature change. And so when you practice cold showers, right, just something simple like that you can do, it's uncomfortable, but it makes you more resilient, more adaptable. It helps enhance helps balance your blood sugar levels, makes you more metabolically flexible, and gives you more immune resilience. So really powerful hack.